things, I don't know about you, but in our household, the Flynn family household, we love the holidays, specifically Christmas. Everything having to do with it, from the foods to the fellowship, the fun with family, from outdoor activities to decorating the tree and Christmas cookies and you name it, wrapping presents. That's my absolute favorite. So I mentioned food. Yes, food. That is a big hot topic during the holidays because everything revolves around food. But what happens when you're trying to eat healthier, or let's say you got your food allergies tested and you know what you have to avoid? How do you navigate this? Well, hopefully I can help you out within the next few minutes. So a lot of people come to me once they know, like, hey, I want to do things healthier. What's a great first step? Well, first step, if you haven't got your food allergies tested, is to just simply take the recipes that you currently use and change the ingredients. So from non-organic to organic, or from pasture-raised grass-fed beef, you're switching from regular beef to that, or your eggs, switch from regular eggs to your free-range eggs. These simple adjustments are a great way, a great baby first step. You know, that first little step that you're taking, if this is your first step in your health journey, it's a wonderful, great first step. Now, if you've already had your food allergies tested and you know what you need to stay away from, then you definitely have to start looking at what you can have, and then also look at different alternatives to those items that you need to avoid. And I'll go over that in just a little bit, but first I want to touch on, if you haven't gotten your food allergies tested, but you want to go one step further, so this is like taking another step in that whole health journey, something that you can do is stay away from a few major items, like staying away from gluten, staying away from dairy, eliminating your colors and dyes, eliminating MSG, processed sugars, and also hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils. If you just simply stay away from all of those things, you will survive the holidays a little bit healthier. You won't be feeling so bloated after those meals. But now getting back to if you've gotten your food allergies tested. One of the things that I think is one of the harder things, because it's hidden in a lot of stuff. Avoiding eggs is a whole topic in itself, because depending on what the egg is doing in the recipe, whether it's leavening or binding, you can use different kinds of replacements. And the Wellness Way actually has a wonderful graphic that explains different and has different substitutions that you can use, and it ranges from using fruit purees to using like baking soda and some kind of acid, but it outlines all of those different kinds of things, even ground up chia or ground up flax. So look for that. That can help you if you're trying to avoid eggs. But on the topic of avoiding eggs, it's hidden in a lot of things, like for instance stuffing. So stuffing is one of those quintessential holiday foods that a lot of people have grown to love, and unfortunately, when you're making stuffing using the traditional way, which is using breadcrumbs or dried bread chunks, I guess you would say, a lot of the breads, including the gluten-free ones, make sure you're reading your labels. The gluten-free ones even have eggs. So you have some alternatives. What are you going to do? And this is where I say you need to think outside the box. You need to get creative, but don't let it overwhelm you. So when you're thinking about stuffing, literally Google is awesome. It is your friend at this time. There are a lot of alternatives, a lot of healthier alternatives that you can do that avoid using eggs in stuffing. So for instance, the last couple of years I used what we can do as a bread. So Sammy's bread happens to be gluten-free, it doesn't use eggs, and it also doesn't use any yeast, and those happen to be allergens that we were trying to avoid at the time. So I just dried the bread and made my own breadcrumbs and was able to use that and made a homemade homemade stuffing. But another alternative, if you don't want to go that route, is you could use rice. You could even use wild rice. There's a lot of great recipes out on Google. I just recently just kind of looked and did a search, and literally type in what you can't have and just say trying to make homemade stuffing, and you'll find alternatives. Experiment with it a little bit. I guarantee you'll be pleasantly surprised. It tastes amazing when you just think outside the box and try something new. All of our holiday celebrations revolve around food. And the thing about food is it's so much more emotional than it is physical. So it's not necessarily that you have to eat that certain thing. It's you crave it because it has emotions tied to it. You know, whether it was your favorite dish as a kid or it's tradition. We have a lot of traditions, you know, Christmas cookies, and you know, we love the holiday stuffing, mashed potatoes and turkey, and all these things are great and wonderful as long as you don't feel horrible, sick after you're done eating them. And that's where making these healthy changes and switching out the ingredients to things that you can eat will make it a happy and wonderful holiday season for everyone who's enjoying that wonderful food. So you have to kind of change your perspective. When you're looking at food, look at it as eating to live instead of living to eat. So you want to make sure that the ingredients that you're using are whole food ingredients and things that aren't going to cause you pain or discomfort, or your children pain or discomfort. And you want to make things taste good, which means it might take a little bit of experimenting, but that's the fun part. You get to take and try different seasons and different kinds of ingredients that maybe you haven't used before. But I guarantee if you start somewhere, just start, you know, Google searching different alternatives for different foods, and just try these different recipes and just sample them and let your kids try them ahead of time. And that way, if you come up with something, let's say you're going to another family's house for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, and you need to bring a dish to pass. If you are able to come up with something that is something your whole family can enjoy and they really love, and you know this because you've tried it ahead of time, then you know, hey, my kid's gonna have something that they love to eat and it's wonderful. You bring it there and I guarantee people will be asking you for the recipe. It's as simple as that. And lastly, when it comes to eating healthy during the holidays, I think this is probably the biggest thing. You got to make sure you set yourself up for success. So creating an environment for success, which I believe is in the pantry. So instead of coming home and bringing home things that you can't have, just fill the cupboard, fill the pantry with ingredients and things that you can have, things that you don't mind that your kid is going to eat, you know, and grab as a snack. If you don't bring those bad things, not necessarily bad things, but bad things for them into the house, then you literally don't have to say no all the time. You can actually, when they say, hey, can I have this for a snack? Can I eat this? You can say, yeah, absolutely. Now, granted, do we have some treats in our house? Absolutely, but they're all healthier treats. They're treats that we approve of, that they don't have any of the ingredients that they can't eat. And I know that I have several friends actually, I've heard this term a lot, you know, the cheat day. I'm like, what's a cheat day? And they're like, oh, we just eat whatever we want, you know, all the sweets, all the whatever, and they don't bother avoiding the things that cause them discomfort. And to that I have to say, I just can't do it, at least not in our household. The amount of pain and just discomfort, the things that your children and you have to deal with, especially when you're dealing with food allergies. For a little bit of pleasure, which I don't even see it as pleasure, because I know in my experience, when I eat things that are on my list that I can't have, I feel miserable. And if I feel miserable, hello, I'm mama. I'm the mama, you know, the super mama with the wave, the cape flapping in the wind. I can't afford to be sick. I can't afford to be down on my game. So I'm going to set my household up for success. I'm going to make sure that I'm going and grabbing the ingredients that I know my children can have, I can have, and so when we make foods, we just find alternatives, healthy alternatives. And so it becomes more of a lifestyle. If you eat as if it's your lifestyle, you don't necessarily crave those things that you used to eat at one time. In fact, at some point, you may come across them and you may try it out of curiosity and realize, oh my goodness, I can't believe I actually ate that at one time. I've heard it and seen it so many times. So as an example, in our household, we can't do dairy. So when it comes to mashed potatoes, we have to do things a little differently than what I grew up with or what my husband had grown up with. So what I love to do, I grew up on a farm and we grew our own vegetables, and so I love to use as much of the vegetables as possible and have as little waste as possible. And so when I make mashed potatoes, I actually have two dishes. I have yummy, awesome mashed potatoes, and I have potato skins. When making mashed potatoes, I'm pretty sure, unless you're not familiar with making mashed potatoes, perhaps you make them from a box. This would be an awesome first baby step into doing things healthier. This is not necessarily a typical size potato, but if you get the russet, these bigger potatoes, I would recommend probably 1 to 2 potatoes per person. Again, I have to tell you right up front, I don't usually measure stuff very much, so I apologize ahead of time. I will do my best. So and when you cut the skins, don't be afraid to leave a little bit of potato on the skins, because they're just gonna make them even yummier. So you just peel the potato, see the skins? And so then what I'll do, you'll cut the potato into small chunks and boil them until they are soft. And you can tell that they're soft when you can pierce a fork into them, and they pierce easily. If they don't pierce easily, they're not quite done. So I am going to just bring this right over here. We'll leave those boil first. So when they're boiling, you're going to take these skins. And so I don't know if anyone's ever seen, you can use whatever oil. I would say either coconut oil, grapeseed oil, or avocado oil. I actually came across these. They're organic, and there's no aerosol. It's just the oil coming out. This happens to be a rosemary oil, and it is pretty phenomenal. Like the flavor that it has on the foods, I love it. So we're going to spray them with a little bit of oil, or you can, if you don't have a spray, you can take a brush and take liquefied whatever the other oils are and just brush them. And I love flavor. I think that's why everybody who comes over, they like my food, because I love flavor. I'm not one of those bland food kind of gals. So I love putting a lot of, to me, I don't think too much there's never too much, right? When it comes to herbs, except cayenne. Don't ever put too much cayenne. That's just not a good idea. So again, I don't use measurements, so let me guess, maybe a half a teaspoon. I'm just shaking it on, you can do that too. So that is garlic powder, black pepper, unless you're allergic. Remember, this is all about the allergies, staying away from things so again, any of the ingredients that I'm putting on, if you're allergic to them, just don't use it, and maybe experiment with a different kind of herb. So this is black pepper. I used to have a black pepper allergy, but I don't anymore. So that's definitely a lot less than the other one. Maybe an 1/8 teaspoon. Oregano. Can never have too much. Remember that. Never too much. Parsley. And onion powder. Again, I'm just sprinkling it on there. Oh, and don't forget the salt. Sea salt. Sea salt is amazing. I think, in my humble opinion, you can never have too much salt, although, yes, it is possible to put too much salt. But when it comes to these, and these specifically, I mean, salt them, you may end up feeling like salting a little bit more later just because as they bake. But everybody loves, you know, potato chips with salt on them. That's kind of what it is. It's potato skins. So they're all seasoned, and you're gonna put them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. If you have a convection oven like I do, then it's gonna be more like 375. It's always 25 degrees less, but for the same amount of time. So I'll go ahead and put that in. Okay, so normally with mashed potatoes, at least from what I remember as a kid, we always put like either cream or milk or something in them, like to help make them nice and creamy, and we, you know, whipped them up and stuff. Sometimes I'll whip up my potatoes, but the one thing, when you're using alternative milks, sometimes they're a little sweeter. I mean, even when you get, let's say, almond milk and things that are unsweetened, they still have a little sweet taste to it. And I experimented making some mashed potatoes with some nut milks, and I didn't like it. It was too sweet. So too sweet for me. So what I use is, I'll use some kind of broth. Now remember, this is all about avoiding your allergens. One of my daughters can't have a lot of meats, so we stay away from like chicken broth or beef broth or things like that, or turkey broth, and I'll use vegetable broth. You can also use bone broth. I prefer something that has some flavor in it, so this always, these kind of broths have like veggies, they have flavor to it. So now as far as how much, it depends on how many potatoes that you're using. So like I had said, 1 to 2 per person. I mean, normally for our size family, I'm using like 10 to 12, maybe in a couple more potatoes, and I'll use about a half a cup of broth. You can use a little more, but not too much. You don't want it to be like soppy. You don't want it to be like slush. You know, you want it to be a good consistency. So I would say I'm pouring in probably about, maybe for the potatoes that I have in there, it was about 1/8 to 1/4 of a cup. Again, it's all based on how many potatoes that you're using. So I just go ahead and start mashing, and also adding salt. Again, okay, so I'm all about flavor. This has to be according to your taste buds. Whenever I make things, my mom always says I put too much salt, but again, I think that you can't possibly use too much salt. But I am tasting it. Yes, there is such thing as it having too much salt, but if you're tasting, I think every good chef is tasting their food. So potatoes will absorb whatever, like whatever you're putting on them. So you'll put some on, you'll think you'll have enough, taste it, definitely taste it. You'll find out if you need to add more. So with potatoes, what I generally add, I'll even do chopped up garlic in the mashed potatoes. This time I'm just going to do some garlic powder. I would say with the amount of potatoes I had, how many did I use? Maybe 6 potatoes, I think. It's just a smaller batch. So that was about maybe a ½ teaspoon of garlic. I don't put black pepper on my mashed potatoes. Maybe I'm a little weird, I don't know, but I just don't. Maybe a little bit of onion, not too much, because onion is always a little sweeter. And I'll put some parsley. And then, now this is going to be totally up to your taste, how much butter you put. Normally, maybe a ½ a cup of butter if you like use the sticks or whatever. So now, again, what is our alternative? We're not using regular butter because we have a dairy allergy. So what we use, this is a product, there's a couple different products out there, but what we use is Melt. It's organic, and the oils are, there's coconut oil, flaxseed, sea salt, sunflower lecithin. So there's none of the allergies that because we have some like pea protein, things like that, but this particular one doesn't have those allergens that we have. So this is the one we can use. So you'll have to kind of look and see what you're able to do in that. I know there are some recipes out there where you don't even have to use butter. You could actually use an oil of some sort to create that creaminess. Totally up to you what you want to do. We actually can do this, so we will do butter, and I am putting in, we love a lot of butter. Again, it's to personal taste. I'd say that was about maybe a third of a cup. Again, I'm sorry that I don't use measurements, but and I don't generally blend up my potatoes. I just mash them this way. Sometimes I'll do the nice creamy ones. I know my mom always did them growing up, and sometimes it's nice to do that for a change, but I generally just use one of these mashers. And voila, mashed potatoes. So you can add as much butter or as much, I mean, you can even add a little more broth depending on what you wanted to do, but it smells, I have to tell you, it smells amazing. Okay, so now I am going to go and pull out the, okay, so remember what I said? We have potato skins as well as the mashed potatoes. One thing I like to do is add a little balsamic. So aged balsamic is amazing. If you want your kids to eat lots of vegetables, I'm telling you, we'll roast up vegetables and we'll just drizzle a little bit of this stuff. It's 25-year-old aged balsamic, if you can have it, unless you're allergic to it, of course. But this, my kids will eat just about any salad, anything, if you drizzle a bit of this on. So we'll just drizzle this over these potato skins, and they are simply scrumptious. They're amazing. Just a crunchy, fun little extra added, which you didn't necessarily plan to make, but if you're making mashed potatoes, you might as well do it. You've got an extra side dish. So, well, I hope that you enjoyed our little alternative way of making mashed potatoes. Have a very happy and healthy holiday season. Merry Christmas from our house to yours.